would pick a windy day, no pun intended, to show off my workshop, which is a single garage with no room for wood. So where do I put it? 2 plastic greenhouses, about 30 quid each, which serve their purpose well, as long as I keep an eye on the plastic covers against leakage. When the greenhouses are empty, good old bungee cords come in handy, but normally the weight of the timber is sufficient. Well, here's the entrance door. It's a side door on the single garage. On the door you get quite windy. I have a seat I can take off quite easily, which I use because I've got concrete floor. I have got some rubber matting, but concrete floor tends to drain me, and I like to have a sit down and a think from time to time. The bottom I've got a detachable rubble bag which I use for all the waste, etc. I can easily unscrew these and detach it, take it to the bin, empty it and put it back on again. Here I have my little metalworking section. The main problem with having metalwork and woodwork combined in the same shop is dust. So I try and keep my little engineering lathe, which is a Warco Super Mini, free from dust. I constantly check on it. It's amazing how, even though I have various dust collectors and air filters, etc., it still gets dust. It's something you just can't avoid, especially when you've been sanding on the lathe. It gets everywhere. So I try and keep as much of it off the lathe as possible because I don't want it on the bedways. I made some wooden handles because in winter time it can get quite annoying when you're constantly playing around with metal. The metal can draw the heat out of your hand very quickly. So I put wooden handles on them. Here I have an executor, which unfortunately I don't like killing wasps and bees. It's not enjoyable, but if I'm on a lathe or on the bandsaw, it can be quite dangerous if I get something whizzing past me. So for my own peace of mind, I have that in at the ready. I did have a wasp nest a short time ago, a couple of years back, and I was constantly getting them. But touch wood, I haven't had to use this too often. In fact, I didn't use it last year at all. So what I did, I sprayed WD-40 on the crevices outside, and that seemed to stop the bees from coming in. So I'm quite happy about that. I've done it again this season, so I keep my fingers crossed that I don't have to use the executor. Here I have a little self-centering vise here, which I use on my pillar drill, my Shocksmith pillar drill, and it's quite useful, and it gives me precision, vertical precision when I'm drilling vertically. And I use that. Actually, I haven't used it on the lathe at all yet. I got a milling attachment for this, but I've never got round to using it on the lathe just yet. I have a boring bar here which I use in the lathe sometimes when I can't get a Forstner bit or a flat bit, spade bit to suit. I can use this boring bar to give me precise dimensions on some of the bores that I use for jigs. Over the years I've made quite a few jigs, as you've seen in some of my videos. Centre drills for the lathe, turning tools for the lathe, various taps and dies which I've acquired over the months. I just get an odd set here now and again and just maintain it. I think I can start from 2mm right up to 8mm metric threads. I have a micrometer, metric and imperial, a digital vernier caliper, and a dial test indicator for centering work on the lathe. Designed for engineering lathes, but I can use it on the wood lathe when I need precision. My radio for listening to football matches, an angle grinder set in a jig for doing cut-offs on metal and cutting threaded bar, which I acquire from time to time, which comes in useful, and I can just set that up in the jig and just use it for cut-offs. Here I have my ornamental turning lathe, which is based on a set of cams which rotate with this handle, like so. I have a follower and a bungee cord here, and by letting the headstock, I've fixed it permanently at the moment, but that's free to rock backwards and forwards. So as the cams come round, hit the follower, it makes a headstock rock precisely according to the definitions on the outsides of the cams. I put my work in the headstock or between centres depending on what work I'm doing. I have an indexing mechanism here so that I can accurately index the movement of the workpiece. I have a trend router that goes in this XY vise here, or alternatively I have a flexible shaft which can go into the end of the trend router. Now before I used you can get a flexible shaft for drills, but they're not rated for high speed, and I found it difficult to get a flexible shaft that's rated for high speeds, but I managed to get one off Banggood. It took about a month to get it, but it served its purpose, so I'm quite happy with that. Here I have a selection of drills. I usually, to stop changing over all the time, I have one dedicated to doing pilot holes, and the beauty of these little I don't know, parkside drills is you can take the head off and you expose a posi drive. So it saves you having to get to another drill, although sometimes it's easier to get another drill and take the head off. But if you're outside or away to someone else's dwellings and you take this with you, it gives you that option. I have 3 drills that have this detachable head. I have a small Ryobi one that runs at very small speeds. I have a heavy duty Ryobi one, and I got the batteries for them are quite expensive, but I managed to get a grey import, they call a grey import, from Amazon, which are about half the price, and I've not had any problems with it, and that's a 6 amp hour one. Now if I want to do any sanding of bowls etc on my lathe, you can use a rotary one, a rotary sander, a disc sander, but sometimes I use this. I just slap different grades of sandpaper on this. It doesn't have to be cut to that shape. I can get the Abranet and that sort of thing, the Velcro attachment, just slap it on and then put it on the rotating bowl etc, and it works, well, it works as well as I think that a dedicated rotary sanding disc would do. So I use the multi-tool for that. I have my cordless jigsaw, various tools you can see on magnets, on magnetic strips again, which I get from Lidl's. I must be a good customer for Lidl's because I get a hell of a lot from them. But it's very useful. Well, this area here is my workbench. I'm having to take up some of the space with my Axminster AW205WL lathe. It's a cracking little lathe. It's a reverse motor and it's got an output shaft at the other end, but it's got a handle on at the moment for use for hand turning, for positioning. But I have made adapters for tool sharpening and disc sanding attachment to go on the end. It's only a small motor, but it does what I want to do for a lot of the videos I've made are using this lathe. Up here I have my screws, my chisel sharpener, which is it's not bad at all. They do Trend do an expensive version of this. It's exactly the same principle, but this is a little cheaper than the Trend version. Up here I have my for my camera. I put my camera in here and clamp it, and then I can position it anywhere along here and twist it as I wish. Otherwise I'd have to have, because I'm on my own, I'd have to pay expensive for expensive camera holders and selfies. Well, I've got tremors, you see, so if I do a selfie, you know, you get dizzy and feel seasick if you watch the video. But I have a couple of these strewn about the workshop, and they're very handy and practical. Here I'm on with a game that I've that I noticed on the internet. It's a strange name. It's called something Escape, which escapes me for the time being. The name of it, Seaside Escape is the name of it. It's basically a matching game. Well, I've started to incorporate it with puppies and football badges or football insignia. But the reason I'm talking about that is because on the bench I've made holes and put threaded inserts into them, such as these. And I put them at about, I don't know, is it 50mm spaces, I think? Something like that. Yeah, 100mm spacing. So that I can put clamps on. I simply undo the clamp, undo the stem here, the clamp, and I can reposition it anywhere I want. Again, this clamps herself. That's one little design fault, is that it gets full of sawdust, so sometimes I can't screw the thread in. But that's basically it, and that keeps things clamped up. I have other clamps as well, which I've made myself from the internet, from ideas that I've got off the internet. Again, I've got my magnetic holders. I find them a lot more efficient because they're very patient of me changing my mind on where I want things. I don't have to make a new holder and everything else and re-screw it. I can just change stuff around. I have about 20 of them on the ceiling, some up here for the drills, spade bits, measuring equipment, etc. Here I've got my Stanley vise, which is quite good. I can loosen it, slacken it off here, and have a different orientation with it. I can lock it in any position, and this is what I like about it. It's got a nice easy thread on it. It's not quick release, I know, but it's quick enough. My planes here, my glues, sharpening systems. This is a special tap for cutting threads in wood, and it comes with a threading box, so I can make my own coarse wooden threads for doing things like vices and clamps and that sort of thing. Although I need to keep on top of the cutter inside here to keep it sharp. It's quite tricky to get the right angle so it cuts efficiently. I have various paints and colourings just for experimentation with different colouring procedures with wood turning, although I haven't took it up seriously yet. Up here I have an Elu router, which is about half my age. It's about 40-year-old, something like that. I've had it ages. Well, this is my Elu router, which I'm going to mount in a table. Hopefully it's a quick assembly of a table I made for it. It's quite an old router is this. It's probably half my age. So I get my first I've got to fix the this little contraption here, and I fix shove that in there like so, lock it up. That's permanently fixed. That's pretty solid as it is. And the holes there. Get the drill. Handle or a knob on the screw and do it that way, it's a bit easier. And then it's just a matter of clamping this, and there we have our cutter there, and I can clamp this in any position and the gap widens and I can push the timber through here and make grooves to what width I want by clamping. So that's basically it. Slapping off the vise. So we have it. Next, I have my Sorby Pro Edge sharpening system, which serves me well for putting a consistent edge on my tools. I have the slight tremors, which doesn't help if I'm trying to sharpen my tools by hand. So I've long since got rid of my my bench grinder. So I've reverted back to this. If somebody could tell me that if the advantage of a straight bevel as opposed to a concave bevel will come from the bench grinder. A straight bevel or flat bevel will come off this. And I've sometimes wondered, is there any advantage of one over the other? So if anybody out there who's watching this can let me know of some ideas of what it is, I'll be most welcome. Next I have the my small belt and disc sander. I can't believe how much I use this, especially when I'm making jigs and fixtures. It comes in really handy for doing small work. I sometimes use the disc sander, but I've got a plethora of disc sanders about the shop in one form or another, whether it's an attachment for the Axminster lathe or putting one in any lathe really. The disc sanders are quite easy to make, but I sometimes use that. Next, up here I have all my chucks and fixtures for this record power Envoy lathe. And unfortunately it's had a little bit of a hiccup regards the electronics, so it's gone back for repair. Record Power are very good about this. It's under a 5-year guarantee, and they've sorted out the transportation of the headstock and the transformer, and they're now looking into repairing it. They've been very good to me, and very reliable, and a marvellous service, a marvellous company to deal with. Here I have the various clamps on the garage door. I never use the garage door. And here I've designed a dust collection system. I've got a Record Power dust collector, and I can adjust this up and down, which gives a slightly more, better suction by lowering that, so I can get a stronger suction. So if I'm doing dust and that sort of thing, if I'm doing shavings, it'll go in that one. I lift it up, and that more for dust that comes straight from the sanding procedures on the lathe. Up here I have again Record Power air filter, which is a remote control system, so I can just switch that on at any time. Here I've got my various finishes, my polishes and waxes, stains and glues, and other stains up here, so this needs sorting out. It's a bit untidy at the moment. Like I said before, I've got another disc sander here and a belt sander on this Charmwood belt and disc sander. I think it's 8 inches, I believe. Again, Charmwood. I've got a fret scroll saw, variable speed scroll saw, which comes with a flexible shaft and a foot control, which is very handy. Saves you having to keep switching the thing on. Next I have the Triton belt and drum sander, which I use quite a lot. I noticed an American equivalent, I think it's Rigid. They have a slot in here for putting a fence like that. Unfortunately, this doesn't, although I've not had to use it really. And finally, I have my Shopsmith. This is a great little machine in the sense that it's a jack of all trades but master of none. I think its best feature is what it's at now, which is a pillar drill. I can adjust the height of it very easily, and it cants to 45 degrees that way. I can adjust it outwards like that, and I can alter the height of that if I want to, and I can also lower the table. The only problem with it, it does tend to flex under the standard construction. So I have had a support system here, which I got off the internet from a Shopsmith owner, and that makes it a lot better, so that it makes it more accurate when it's drilling vertically to what it did before, because it tended to flex when you put any pressure on. Another aspect of the Shopsmith universal machine is it's on casters, and I can move it out of the way, thank goodness. So it helps me get behind. It's also a lathe. The whole thing comes down like that, and it's a lathe. It's a saw table, and it's a disc sander. And what else is it? Oh yes, it's you can. I've forgotten now what else it can do. Disc sander, saw table, pillar drill, lathe, and there's one other thing. I think it's horizontal borer. That's right. You can use it like a drill, but horizontally, so you can clamp things to it and drill long holes. Those systems are very cumbersome in trying to change from one to another. That's why I've just left it at this to do one, which is a pillar drill, which is what I think it excels at. It's a variable speed pillar drill, which is invaluable when you're making jigs. I've got various other things under here. I think I showed you early on. I have a lathe steady, which I made from plywood. I haven't quite used it in vengeance yet, but I think it'll be alright. I've used some Lego tyres from an old Lego set I had, and I made the wheels out of wood so that they'd fit the tyres. I've also got a Longworth chuck, which I've made out of plywood. Again, there's various videos on the internet that show you how to make one of these, and yet just by rotating that you can adjust and they automatically centre. You can't get a good grip on bowls on this, so I wouldn't recommend it for doing serious work on bowl turning, but for making the bottoms flat and smoothing off the bottoms of large bowls, it's a very handy thing. And you can do a small amount of turning, but the grip on this isn't strong enough to take any severe torques during the cutting action. Next I have, which I haven't used yet, which is an eccentric jig which you bolt your work here, and by loosening these screws you can rotate this, which gives it a greater or lesser eccentricity. So you can vary the extent of eccentricity by moving this disc round, and you mount your workpiece to this. A chuck, you can mount a chuck to this and then put your work in the chuck. I haven't come to test that yet because I have to worry about the dynamics of revolving, of this revolving round with a metal chuck screwed onto that wood. So that's to be tested yet. I have for making knobs. Simply have an indexing system here and screw that to the thing, and I can rotate it to any number I want to create recesses in the side, so that I can create any kind of knob that I want. And now you simply position it on there, get a Forstner bit, rotate that or the whole table, fix it to that table, and I rotate the whole table, then drill, and I can create any number of cutouts to make knobs. I have, well, I also have a long hole boring system which will take a while to set up on the lathe, and I don't want to interfere with that until I get my headstock back from record power. So that's essentially it. I have this, what I mentioned earlier, I have the threading, the easy set threading jig from Hope Woodturning. This is very good and very well made, a very precise tool, but these shafts come in one thread only, so if you want to change your threads in your wood, then you have to order a separate one of these according to what threads, coarser or finer, that you want. You put the router in the tool post, you put this in the tool post and the router cutter in the headstock or in the chuck of your lathe, and use that to cut the threads. There's various videos. If you contact Hope Woodturning, there's a good video on demonstrating its use, and it gives you the opportunity of being more ambitious with your wood turning in making boxes, etc. So that's basically it. Well, I hope you like the video. I know it's a quick, brisk tour of my workshop. As you can see, it's quite cluttered. I have a lust for tools, basically, and I sometimes buy tools even though I have no specific use for them, because my theory is I'll find a use for them later when I start designing things. The thing that frustrates me is when I'm designing and I think, oh, I could do with a tool, and it slows down the design process and I have to shop around for a tool, which interferes with my mental processes of designing the tool. So I'd rather have a tool which I think can encompass most of what I'm doing, and buy that even before I actually need to have one. So basically that's it. I hope you've enjoyed the video of my workshop, and it'll give you some ideas for your own workshop. And by all means, if you've got some ideas and criticisms of mine, by all means let me know. So until then, see you in my next video. Bye.